handled already. And there is some truth to that. I'm sorry to say, there is some truth to that. We are way behind in this battle because we really thought some people were looking out for us. And when that's not true, most of our problems just keep getting worse and we wonder what gives. I thought I had some government person who should be checking to see if they're microwaving us in our homes. Sounds like a really reasonable question. Maybe they shouldn't put fluoride in the water and aluminum in the medicine, and they shouldn't be putting different genetic compounds inside our food. Maybe. But that's where, for us, the idea is that we want something different than what they're handing us. So if you go to a quote-unquote 5-star steak restaurant and pay $75 for the best meal they can give you at that place, and they bring you tomato soup and grilled cheese, it's your job to get up and say, that's not what I ordered, and fight for what you believe you actually want, or need, or just think you kind of deserve. A hamburger is better than that, even though that might not be close to it. At least it gets you to the steak category. In our health and in our environment, that's where we are today. Is awareness first, key, because we have to know why we're jumping up out of our chairs and screaming and yelling, or going to the authorities and being able to properly produce, because we can use their laws against them just as much as they're using their laws, our laws, for them. So if you buy a 5G phone, you are saying, please people, irradiate me more. That's what's happening. If you're getting a smart house meter put into your house and you're nesting your world, you are saying, please 5G me more. And as we go to driverless cars and we allow for Tesla to take over the entire auto industry, we are saying, please 5G me more. So they're going to do it because they can make money with it. And we're also perfectly okay with that. We've become convenience junkies. We're addicted to the process of things showing up immediately. And it's a really cool concept. But we're doing it in the third dimensional way, which really sucks, and it kind of is slow and it takes up a lot of resources. When we start talking about the way we're going to, at the end of this class, we're going to see that we have a power, and I love that mention on the idea, consciousness is our power. It's the greatest power, and hence why everything in the last, I say at least 100 years, but when we look in history, it might be the last 5,000 years, it's actually been working against us. We just weren't as organized and grouped together and all of these things that we've been recently. So we're, again, playing against ourselves. I like starting my classes at my actual office. What we do now twice a week is something where we meet, we talk about these things all the time. For anyone who's interested to know more than what we're going to talk about today, it's on Facebook. You search for Brilliance Nutrition. It's the company. You've got it on the top of the page here now that you're holding in front of you, so everyone can look through all of those details. I'm approximately 400 hours on Facebook right now, and they've told me a few times over that I can't take up any more space, and I just keep doing what I'm doing. We'll see what they say. But I love starting with a breath work function, because if I've got your attention right now, and you're a person who goes, breath work, I don't like it, and I get you to do it a few weeks in a row, you actually start to realize it's one of the most important things for you to develop your own human body. Absolutely critical. And for anybody who's not here, you'll start to get used to me when I say, you've got to drink water, you've got to breathe. If you can't do that, you're technically not human. You're kind of somewhere between a frog and a rabbit. So that's where you are if you're not doing those things first. I want people to understand that that's how you get better at this. Someone was talking to me about anxiety as we were starting today. I've heard a lot of people have sleepless issues. They can't turn off their brain from analyzing problems and issues. It's because you're not breathing. Your body can't oxygenate. It's not comfortable enough to let you go to sleep. It's afraid you might die in the process of just going to sleep. So when we do our breath work, when we're conscious, and when we actually calm our body down, we get to be more in control of how our system functions and operates. And that's where this turns the tide. And we are faster than them. We are better than them. But when you're distracted, when you're not taking care of your health, I started this mission because if I could get people not so concerned about their health problems, they would start doing things like what I heard with the speaker from Virginia Beach. They take their energy and activism, and Paulette and Bob, and they organize and they write books like Ilana, and they do these things because it finally makes sense. They've got the time, they feel good, they want their world to change. That's why this is honestly one of the greatest gifts I can give. This process we're going to start with, it's really simple. I'm one of those that likes to do active meditation, breathing, chanting, fun stuff like where you carry stuff on your head and you move around with rocks in your hands like Yoda and Luke Skywalker, because I'm very high functioning, crazy, moving all the time. So this is beautiful to finally realize that as you breathe in and you make a statement, every cell in your body is hearing that. When you say something, it is going through the whole system. It's not just up here, it's through the whole body. So when you struggle with words that are like on this page, I'm here and I really want to change things, but I don't know how. Okay, great. I'm going to learn something that's going to improve my effectiveness at this. The world gets a little brighter. It gets a little better every time we do that. And it just keeps getting better. So the way I like to do these things is to kind of guide at first, and so everyone can kind of understand, and together it really does become more powerful. What I'll say in this process is that you'll all take a big deep breath in, and as you have that breath, the phrase that we're saying is what you're going to use that breath for. And in this room, 35, 40 people who are going to say it together, it actually has an even bigger impact. Because when you speak with other people, same frequency, same mentality, it gets stronger. It's not just you anymore. So this process is really beautiful because it does align. Do we need to get a table?
It's not mine, no. No, is that yours?
Oh, sorry.
Joseph, your collar. Your shirt collar. There you go.
You got the powers?
Do I have the alfalfa thing going too?
All good.
That's good. Okay.
Oh boy.
So, follow along with me. It's really simple and easy. If you're scared, you don't like doing this type of stuff, it's okay. You're with the rest of us. We'll carry you for a little while. Eventually, I expect you to do it on your own. But it's weird at first that we have to do this. You kind of feel like you're in kindergarten. And people are telling you to say your ABCs. And you're like, I should know this already, right? None of you are very practiced at it though, and that's okay. We're learning. This is a big, big deal. So, I'll guide through, we'll say this as a group, and then I'll get into all the scary details, and hopefully it won't freak you out nearly as bad as what I thought it was if I just drop it on you. So if you follow along with me, the instructions are here. I'll talk, you do, it's easy. So take a deep breath in. And everyone say, I am here.
I'm here.
Take a deep breath in. I see a need for change. Breathe in. Stress solves nothing. Breathe in. I am a part of change. Breathe in. I am here to be a part of change. When I drive to a place like this, and it takes me 2.5, 3 hours, like I left at 8:45 this morning to get here, to be here at 2, and to take care of a couple of other things, but this is the whole time I'm driving. This is this relationship. It's forever. And when I show up, I don't get sketched or scared on telling people who, most of you probably go, bullshit. I stress all the time, and it gets me done with a lot of problems. But you're doing it in a really hard way. So as we go through tonight's material, we're going to ask everybody, the reason the sheets are here as well, is for you to take some notes. We're going to try to go through most of this with minimal questions, interruptions, and details until we get to a breaking period right before our hiatus when we actually will go through LA Skywatch's material. And then at the very end, I want to kind of collect all of the good questions and things that people don't feel get answered. Because when I say the very first thing I'm going to say right here, every single one of you are going to want to throw your hands up and get really angry at me. Just give me time to figure out, to walk you through this process. By the end of it, most of you are going to be in a very new frame of perspective. Just like the gentleman was saying before, if you don't know what the 5G system is, the network is, you don't know what you're dealing with. It's not just really scary cell phones and TV screens. And again, 200 feet, they won't let it be 200 feet. It's about 9 to 14 feet because they can't allow for there to be an overlap of coverage with their system. And the way California is getting screwed by this is they're actually making it to where every new building and every new building redesign, when you see them redoing the front of a shopping center, they're installing 5G in the front panels of the new shopping center. That's how it's going. It's going to be on the top of every apartment building. It's going to be on every street light. If you start noticing your street lights are going to get changed in the evenings in an intersection, and one of them is going to have a very big bulb on the top of it with a tiny little spindle. That's a 5G tower. The whole thing is a tower. And you just can't see it now because you've always known that there's a stoplight there. So you won't care. And that's going to get you. When we were talking to a lot of individuals, I've collected so many great clients over the years that had no idea 20 years ago that they were sensitive to this stuff. They were already getting the issues, just like myself. And they didn't know what was going on because no one was talking. Here today, this collection of people, we at least know something's going on, and now we're going to break down the what's actually inside there. Did we get the slide turned on?
Yes, sir.
I can speak well, and you guys are hearing me decently, right? The only thing that the nice hands going up is if I am speaking too fast and going way too quick for individuals, just say, slow it down, because when I go through the depth of this, I really do hope that a few of you actually walk out of here going, okay, now I've got a different game plan. Now I've got a different strategy to work at this. It should be, I guess, So for everybody who doesn't know, do you want that off?
Well, maybe part of it.
Beautiful? So now it's kind of like an intimate little
Yeah, it's
theater
nice.
setting. Someone, we talked about earlier about being funny. I was never funny. I'm really scary. But I'm scary in the way that's actually like good knowledge scary. So it is beautiful to understand. This group has been a home for me, like Bob was saying, for years, to speak about stuff that normally when I learn about these things, I can't talk to anyone about this. It's too crazy, and it's too big, and you have to have the first few things already under your wrap. So a group that was talking about chemtrails and asked me to come and give some discussion items on what's really going on and seeing all this happen, I gained a lot of my experience in actually doing genetic experimentation and working for Monsanto with GMO materials on soy and corn. And that's when I first realized something's wrong, because it was bad. And it's grown to this level where with Earth and the whole geology, I couldn't do the evil thing, luckily. I didn't go down that route. I didn't get involved in any kind of satanic craziness. And compromise myself. I went to the fun and the love of my life, which was geology and paleontology, believing I would be okay. Kind of only finding out that I was actually helping the system just get worse too. So, we all live here on planet Earth. Most of us are here for 7 to 10 decades, and then we like to walk away thinking it's actually going to be better, because we like to feel like we've done a good job and made a positive impact on our planet. Every human being who had any intelligence or any function that was above and beyond the average person in the last 100 years has been used against the actual human population. All scientists are corrupted in one way, shape, or form, either their work's corrupted or they're put out to pasture and told that they're insane until they die, and then they take all their information away from them then. And when we start to understand that the system now, when you look up something on YouTube or Facebook or most of your websites, they're trying to program the antithesis ideas into you. So if you look up this idea of Earth changing in the seasons that we are, global warming is real. It's caused by humans and cow farts and cars. There's no chance there's anything. The science is settled. We've seen everything we could possibly imagine. And if you understand where they were saying the idea that corporate interests or individual interests is the decision that you're making. If you're buying something from someone who has a brand label on the outside of it, you are saying, thank you, company, for doing what you do. I want more. If you want it to be something of your own and you DIY life again like we did 100 years ago, 100 years ago, everyone knew how to take care of themselves and technically their family and things around them when it came to farms and forests and streams and ponds. We knew how to do that. And here now, we have lost it to where we have to go to a doctor if we feel like we get a sniffle or a stomach ache. We can't take care of our cars because they're too complicated or electrical and there's nothing you can do underneath of the hood. We've gotten to a place where you can't even really shop for yourself anymore. You have to now start paying a robot to do it for you to send it to you 6 hours later. That's where we are now. In this world, we have things that are happening that are the symptoms or the signs of this process. So, as we're understanding this, everyone here in California, really everyone from Mexico to Nevada all the way to Northern California, felt the earthquakes of July 5th and July 6th, if I remember correctly.
4th and 5th.
July
4th and 5th. July 4th and 5th. So the 4th was a 4.6 and the 5th was a 7.1. A lot of people had a very interesting experience with the 7.1. And it's interesting because it actually is a telltale sign for a geologist that it wasn't actually an earthquake. Earthquakes have two different functional means of force, because when you're slipping the planet crust next to each other, it creates a friction, and then there's a point where it actually grabs and sticks, and then it lets go. And once you kind of pull the rubber band back, and you let the rubber band go, you get that initial smack, and then you get the rubber band finally calming itself down. This earthquake that they call had no what's referred to as P wave, primary wave. It only had the shaking of the whole secondary wave back and forth. It didn't have this up-down undulation. That's the energy moving through the rock. People who were close to the area in Ridgecrest, in Trona, in the areas around China Lake, said that it felt more like a bomb went off underneath of their feet, and they kind of lifted up for a second, and then everything started going crazy back and forth. So the interesting statistics are, in 1964, at the underneath of the actual epicenter for this earthquake, they dug 4,000 feet below the surface in order to make way for who knows what. Because in 1964 they said you don't need to know about that. And we're going to do what we want to do in this spot, and we'll let you know if we feel like it's important. Or we'd like you to come and work for us and do it against the fellow human beings and neighbors and family that you have. So this relationship of governmental black budget materials and actually projects that we're not as public allowed to really hear anything about because it's classified. Your government every year actually takes 500 million pieces of paper and redacts all of the information from being let into any level of the actual public knowledge. 500 million. So when you think you're reading a book and you've got all the marbles stuck together and you're like, I think I got my handle on this, you're barely usually touching the surface from an outside researcher and a person who's talking to individuals. You get a couple whistleblowers every so often, usually right before they're about to die, because that's when they're feeling a little bit safe. And then you find out all of this crazy information and details. There's a place in this area called the Nevada Triangle. Largest concentration of avionic disasters and planes and weather balloons and different types of mechanical products that fall into this area, just like what we've always known as the Bermuda Triangle. Truth be told, there's a place over by Japan called the Devil's Sea, and it kind of has the same thing. Craziest coincidence, they're all in the same latitude of our planet. They're all exactly the same elevation. If you would go from, quote unquote, the equator to the pole, they're actually all in a line. And energetically, something really unique, and I would recommend for people who are wanting to know more about this, look up Dan Hoagland and the relationship of what's called the 19.6 or the 27.3 angles for the energetics of the planet. You'll learn a lot about what's really going on underneath of your feet, and it will connect some of these dots a little better than what I'm going to be able to focus on it. At China Lake, what happened that day was we're actually looking at a swarm or a cluster of earthquakes, and the cluster started a week and a half before the actual earthquakes, to the point that on some days there was actually 1,300 to 1,500 micro tremors and small quakes loading up the area in this vicinity and then allowing it to actually pop and explode the way that a rice kernel or a corn kernel would if you put it on oil. So the relationship to understand for everyone here today is, unlike what's happening at where Kathy was mentioning, Lompoc, San Clemente, all along the coastline of California, there are fault lines that actually move in the San Andreas north-south direction, and there are places where we see a lot of earthquakes. This spot here doesn't have really any of that going on. It's actually kind of a dead zone in terms of California for having fault lines moving through there. There's some, but they're actually moving perpendicular and they're compressing against each other versus the idea of actually moving strike slip and going along the way that the San Andreas does. So geologically speaking, the idea is, for me, that makes this really weird. How did a 7.1 earthquake occur in a spot that doesn't have a lot of this energetic loading and this whole, relationship that we usually see in San Francisco with the Candlestick Quake or the 1906 quake, or we see these things with all these other places that we know the faults are there to produce that. That's what they do. This space here actually started rumbling, and it didn't have this type of seismic activity on a routine basis before that week. It's not normal in this area for this to be the case. So as we start getting the 6.4 and start getting the big one at 7.1, all of these little fault lines are here, and they try to blame it on something like that when it's just not geologically feasible or possible for it to do what it did. Something's off. And you have to be a little aware and informed to get that, because for everybody else, you just felt the earthquake, and you're like, yep, there was an earthquake, and you don't think, what else could possibly be going on here? It just doesn't strike you. Same thing as when you're talking to a person who's actually not seeing the large foggy cloud come out the backside of the airplane and goes, no, looks good to me. I don't understand, I take 15 medications every day and I'm so full of toxicities, this is normal, right? I'm just getting old. And that's where the convincing, it's taken 100 years for us to believe that that's the case, that that's even possible. And as we understand this type of signature, we start looking at other reasons for why could that possibly have happened. And you've got to be a scientist and have a scientific mind to really look for bigger and better details until you get to a spot where you start to understand this facility here. This is the military base at China Lake. This is the complex that actually has been here for a little over 70 years, and we're not allowed to know the information and details for what it is they spend money or focus on, or how they're doing whatever it is they're doing. Militarily, the idea is they are closed-lipped, and if you're in the group there, you'll know a little bit. You may not know everything. The theory, of course, that we have here is that in that 4,000 feet of excavation, there is multiple levels of actual facilities and material being done underneath of the ground surface that would be very easily to detect and understand what it is if it was above the ground surface. And now that we live in a world of satellites and information exchanges, and they can't cover up every Google photo, they try really hard, but they can't get them all. They can't stop small planes from going over certain areas to see that maybe something weird's going on over there. We've all heard the craziness behind the idea of let's storm Area 51, right? Once you get, if you even get in the hangar and you're actually there, everything's below ground and they sealed up the tunnel, you're done. And if they just drop a tactical nuke that'll actually only explode on the surface, you're all cooked. And people love to say they can't get us all. Trust me, they have only thought of, in the last 100 years, how, if something would change, how do we get them all? So first might be some directed energy weapons to get people to feel like their head's about to explode and run the other direction, or make you go kind of confused and insane. The funny thing with storming Area 51 is there's really only one access road, and you want to try to run 1 million people in normal cars on their own into one area with a 2-lane freeway. You're not going to get there. You're going to get about 45 miles away from the space, and then everyone's going to get tired and go home. Like, that's where it's cute, and it did bring some attention to some things, but in this facility, from what we've been able to actually understand from little bits of documentation, not a lot of information, but a little bit, this photo here actually shows the flight path and the area of or territory for all of the chemtrail planes to leave China Lake Air Force Base and go into the rest of the world to actually drop their particulates. And this is really how it goes. There are some commercial airports that actually do some of this work, but most of it is done in military facilities and locations, and they just have commercial-looking airplanes and jets that are modified to go out of a facility like this and do what they've got to do. As soon as you can get comfortable with the idea that if you're not one of them, you're a lab rat to them. And your social security number is what allows them to track how well they're doing at their process. So when you have a number connected to your name, I do kind of remember a German experiment that kind of did sort of the same thing. They give you a number, and then they watch to see what happens. Whether it's from the water, the air, the chemtrails, the food, the whatever, and when they have you drop your form off at the local ER or hospital or your primary care doctor, they're checking to see how much they're affecting the rest of your life. So if you have fibromyalgia, great! They've been putting stuff out there that's supposed to cause fibromyalgia. If you're sensitive to Wi-Fi and you're showing up to your doctor saying, I have really crazy thoughts all of the time. Okay, let's get you on some medications because, well, we know that we've been doing that, but we're waiting to see how it affects you. So maybe it's just gut dysbiosis or stomach aches, maybe it's hormone imbalances, maybe it's high-grade anxiety. Whatever might happen, they're trying to see the concentration and the statistics behind their experiment.